starting to come up and settle east, what is today Eastern Slovakia. Other Rusyns from way out east, from Volhynia, here they are coming and passing through the mountains and settling the same areas all the way to Spiš County. Here's the Slovaks from Nitra and Benčín coming east and settling the same territories. And so what you see is Rusyns to the north, Slovaks to the south. And now finally the settlement of Eastern Slovakia. Now what about those Germans, by the way? I don't know if you know this, there's a big pocket actually in Akron, Ohio, of Germans from the Carpathians who settled there. They're quite numerous. And the Germans brought the people from Spiš County, those of you who came from those Spiš villages, brought all those things that are distinctively Spiš to the Rusyns and the Slovaks. Things like lace making, okay, which becomes distinctive to the costumes of the people here in Spiš County. Influenced in their food, like the use of apples and walnuts in everyday cooking and baking. Things like paper decorations for Christmas. All of these things the Germans bring, and who adapts them are both the Rusyns in Spiš and the Slovaks. So, now we get there, we're settled alongside one another. This should put it in the context for immigration. So here's Austria-Hungary, which our ancestors left. That same gray part I showed you, the Russian part, that's what this is, okay? So now you can see in Austria-Hungary, the straddling of that northern border, that dotted border is the border between the Hungarian part of the country and the Austrian part of the country. This portion is called Galicia. So if you're a Lemko, who said you came from Galicia. Who else comes from Galicia? Some of your Polish neighbors come. Most of your Ukrainian neighbors in this part of the world come from Galicia as well. They come from eastern Galicia. Here's, right below here, so here's Ukrainians, Poles, Rusyns, Slovaks. But you see that what Rusyns and Slovaks now have in common is 1,000 years of Hungarian rule. Okay, so now we're two different groups, two different cultures, two different languages, came to the same area at the same time, brought by the Hungarians. The Hungarian government overlays its culture on us. In fact, I always tell people, probably one of the neatest things about being Russian and Slovak is all the really cool words in our language are Hungarian words. Words like palachenke, kreis, or betyár, bachelor, or arobak, which is like no devil may care young man, or balamuta, troublemaker. Okay? See, somehow we took that away from Hungarian culture. Hungarian became very much a part of these two languages, and both Slovak and Russian have a lot of Hungarian words. We made a Pirogi one day at our church, and there's a woman who had converted in who's ethnically Hungarian. So we're sitting there and finishing Pirogi, and there's two old Russian women across the table, and they tell a joke in Russian. And I said to my Hungarian friend Eva, I said, Eva, I'll translate it for you, so you don't know what they said. She said, don't bother, it has so many Hungarian words, I got the drift. So you have that kind of influence for Rusyns. So that's one of the things that influenced the two of us, is this constant Hungarianization. And in fact, here is the land we left at the time of immigration. And if you listen to your ancestors and you do genealogy research, these names are going to mean something to you. Because here's Eastern Slovakia, and here are the Hungarian names of the counties. Szepes, which I'm saying in Russian Slovak is Spiš. Sáros, which is Sárish County for Rusyns and Slovaks. Zemplín, which looks like Italy, comes all the way down into Hungary. And then a piece of County remains in Slovakia. And then you had scattered Rusin and very large Slovak communities in Gemet, Borsod, Avoy, Turna, and Szabad, which is all the way in Hungary. So these names are the names that as you talk to ancestors, you'll see them on documents, records, etc. Now, what more makes us distinctive? Well, let's talk about language. Here's a book in the Slovak language. Okay? And most of you, being English readers, can kind of at least piece it together. Šariška Muzeum Bardeo. Okay? The Šariška Museum in Bardeo. That's what Slovak looks like. Okay, Rusyns, read the one in Rusin for me. Or still better yet, Slovaks. Can you read that? Okay, what's the difference? The first and most dramatic difference is Rusyn is written in an entirely different alphabet.
Cyrillic.
Slovak is written in the Latin alphabet. Rusyn is written in the Slavonic alphabet. By the way, this is Nasha O'Susan. These are fatherland in Rusyn. Okay? So I heard Ruth did it, by the way. She went to Rusyn language school this summer. So she got at least 5 months where she can read that. So we have 2 different languages with 2 different alphabets. Now, many of you, because your Rusyns from Slovakia, are going to say, but I thought they didn't read this. Again, no surprise. Let me tell you what happened. You heard about Father Alexander Kuzmovic and what we call Hungarianization or modernization. Both Slovaks and Rusyns lived through this. In 1868, when the Hungarians became equal with the Austrians in their government, the Hungarian parliament said, you know what, we got a problem. We, the Hungarians, in the Hungarian portion of this country, we're a minority in our own country. And they were right. 60% of the people who lived in Hungary were not Hungarians. So they started to pass laws called modernization laws that was to turn their non-Hungarian populations into Magyars, into Hungarians. And one of the first things they did was they closed their Croatian schools, their Slovak schools, and their Russian schools. And if you wanted your kid to go to school, you had to go to school in one language and one language only. Guess what?
Hungarian.
Okay, well, for Rusyn kids to go to Hungarian school, they got to learn the Latin alphabet, because Hungarian is in Latin as well. And then the Prešov Greek Catholic, one of the other things the Hungarian government did was pressure Rome to bring the Greek Catholic Church, which was, the entire Rusyn church was united in Uzhhorod-Mukachevo was the capital, pressured Rome to break it into 2 dioceses, the Prešov diocese and the Uzhhorod-Mukachevo diocese. And they did that because they realized that if they could break the diocese apart, they could work separate bishops against one another. And so the Prešov diocese passes a law that now all the documentation for the Prešov diocese has to be in Latin alphabet. And all formal correspondence in the Hungarian language. Okay, so this doesn't have to happen for the people in Poland, the Lempos, or for the people in what is today Transcarpathia. So what you find is, in America, many of these young people who were educated in these Hungarian schools and come from the Prešov Greek Catholic diocese, speak Scottish and parts of Zemplin, only, by the time they get here, only can read the Latin alphabet, not the Cyrillic alphabet. And in fact, the largest fraternal for Rusyns here, the Greek Catholic Union, started its newspaper in 1892, and within 10 years, started a portion of that newspaper written not in Cyrillic, but in Latin, a Latin alphabet, so that those who could no longer read Cyrillic could still read it. So sometimes, I've selfishly kind of comical, sometimes people will bring me something to read, and they'll be like, it's in Russian, and I'm like, no, it's not. It's in Rusyn, you know, or in Church Slavonic. I'm like, yeah, but we don't read that. We don't speak that. So a portion of the Rusyn community here ended up losing its ability to use Cyrillic. In the revival of the Rusyn language in Europe, however, I'm happy to tell you, in the last 15 years, now Rusyn is standardized as a standard language in Eastern Europe. Now Rusyn is written entirely and exclusively in the Cyrillic language. So there could be translations of it, but it's gone back to its roots. Rusyn and Slovak have dialects that are both similar and different, and I don't expect you to read this. It's just to show you. We're talking about the Rusyns of Slovakia. This is the way they speak. Here's the way the Rusyns of Poland speak. Here's the way the Rusyns of Ukraine speak. Here's the standard literary Slovak. Here's that Scottish dialect I talked about. And then, and I'm sure at least one of you in this room is one of these poor people, the Slovaks. Slovaks are people who come from Zemplin County, around the Branov area, and the Bardejov area, and the Humen area of eastern Slovakia. When they come to me and they say, I want you to help me do my genealogy research, am I a Rusyn or a Slovak? Boy, what a challenge. Because Slovak language is 50% Slovak and 50% Rusyn. So they literally straddle the fence. And in fact, when people were starting to develop this concept of nationality in the 1850s, 1880s, for a while the Slovaks played around with the idea of being a separate people, saying we're not either Slovak or Rusyn, we're Slovaks. They eventually gave that up, and I would say to you today, the vast majority, probably 70% of Slovaks identify as Slovaks, and another 30%. And what does it? How do they make that decision? If the Slovaks are Roman Catholics, they identify with the Slovak community. If they're Eastern Rite Orthodox or Byzantine Catholics, they identify with the Russian community. But you might meet one of those Slovaks, especially if you've ever heard that word. They even have their own word for how to speak. And then there's a subset of Slovaks called Carpatho-Rusyn. And see, oh my gosh, I'm shaking their heads, I don't even know about it. Because they use this word "butori," which is how they talk about speaking. All right, here comes your test. With everything I've now said, there's 5 costumes from Upper Shadish County. Which one is Rusyn? Take a look. All those who think number 1, please raise your hand. Don't be shy. Who thinks number 2 is Rusyn? Who thinks number 3 is Rusyn? Who thinks number 4 is Rusyn? Okay, that's about a lot. Who thinks number 5 is Rusyn? And most of you were too afraid of shame. Okay, well, it looks like this tended to get the most. The right answer is number 3. But on what basis? On what basis? You see how you kind of divide it up? Here's the moral of my story. While you can use language and faith and history to divide peoples, to say, I know what they are, you can't use simple things, day-to-day things like costume and food, to absolutely identify it in many instances. And here's why. Because those day-to-day things like costume and food, they rely on topography. They rely on what's available where you live, not who you are.